Hi, this is Alex Levin, and I'm here with Rebecca Greene, and we're here to talk about 15-minute founder. And we thought we'd talk about AI today. So definitely it is a popular topic, but this is more than that. As founders 3.5, 4 years ago, AI technology wasn't in a place where we felt it was going to be critical for our business. And even though we understood we had a lot of data in our business that could be used to build AI agents and could be used to automate what was happening, used to improve experiences for our customers, it wasn't easy enough for us to build on AI and wasn't part of the bet early. I'd say today it is, and we're trying to help founders think through how they need to use AI, whether they should use it, and what they're going to do next. So I guess Rebecca, to start, when did you know that we would start investing more with AI?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when we started seeing the power of ChatGPT like everyone else, it got us much more excited about the speed at which AI could get good enough. And I think even in the early models, when we did some experimentation, it was good enough for fun use cases, for personal use cases. But really, in the last 6 months, I think we've started to become very, very excited and surprised by what it can do to the point where I think the moment for me is when it felt like it would be better than a human in some cases. Not the threshold has always been, is it accurate enough or is it as good as a human? And for the first time I experienced something where I was like, oh, that's actually better than a human. And I was having a conversation with ChatGPT in a voice setting, and I mentioned it was my birthday at the beginning of the conversation. We had a conversation about all kinds of other things, and at the end the AI remembered to say, oh, and I hope you have a wonderful birthday, as we closed out the conversation. I think that's the kind of moment where I was just like, oh my God, this could become better than a human.
Yeah, I remember the day like that happened. You were like telling me about this thing that I'd remembered. But I think, for a lot of people that was it. Like I'll make fun of like Amtrak. Like I remember calling Amtrak. They were one of the early ones to start using bots on voice and would come on and say, "What do you want?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm interested in X." And instead of like in understanding anything about what I was doing, I imagined what it was doing is basically doing a search, finding the first result and reading that back. And it could have nothing to do with what I'm asking about. At that point, I'm yelling at it saying, representative, representative. And like it has no idea what's going on. To all of a sudden, yeah, you had me play with the same thing where all of a sudden we were playing with our voice agent on top of ChatGPT at the time. And I'd say the things that struck me were one, speed of response, like we were able to get speed of response much better. Two, interruption handling, like I could interrupt our voice agent and like it would still work. Three, when I asked questions it didn't know the answer to, it could handle that smoothly. And then, yeah, to your point, it started remembering information. So if I said it was a nice day, it would then like talk about that later. Or if I like really, gave it some personal information, it would be able to like incorporate that into the next answer. So I think, yeah, that was the first time for me, even more so than like the when I was like chat, like I don't know, I'd done like text back and forth to chat GPT, but when I saw some of the capabilities we had built on the voice side is when we said like definitely like we need to be investing much more than we are today. If I think about like our next steps, you know, we weren't ready to just go and bet the entire farm. Like I don't think we were saying, hey, we're going to stop all other development and only do this. Like, do you look back at it and say like we should have invested even more from the beginning? Like, have we moved fast enough to do more with AI?
Well, you know my take. I think we never move fast enough to do anything we want to do. But in general, in terms of our choices around resource allocation, I don't think so. And I think there's a lot of, I don't think I would have done something different in hindsight, because I do think the speed at which different models have gotten better at different things has materially changed who we might build on top of, or how we might choose to build on top of multiple models or leverage them. I think LLM companies are clearly starting to carve out lanes into how deep into the experience they're going to be going. And I think like they could have literally wiped out a lot of the investment we would have made in the previous year just by like leapfrogging that. And so it's starting to become more clarified, like where they're looking to invest and where they're not looking to invest, and how companies can add value on top of those. So I don't know. I think a lot of the early stuff we would have invested in, it would have gone to waste, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look at it and I think it's, it is amazing how much it's developed in a year. I think it would have been nice to sort of have, let's say, one or two people sort of playing with it like a toy, trying, and more or less that was you and me and maybe an engineer. But it would have been nice maybe to have one or two more people playing with it, but it wouldn't have been for any ROI. Like it wouldn't have been building a product for customers yet. It wasn't ready to go and do that. There were too many uncertainties. but that would have been nice. Like at this point, I agree with you. It does feel like it's a little bit more clear what's going to happen. And I think the hard question now is becoming, at what point in the stack do we invest? Because it's clear that, OpenAI believes they're going to continue to make not incremental improvements, but exponential improvements, and they're going to eat a lot of people's businesses. And we've seen like a lot of the early apps that were built on top of OpenAI like don't exist because OpenAI just can do it, or as an individual or a company, I can do it on top of an OpenAI easily enough. But it does feel like there are going to be some critical functionalities that OpenAI doesn't have. So one example we've talked about a lot is, testing and QA. In a traditional environment, like you have a code that goes out, you run it once, you see if it works or not, and it's done. But in an AI environment where every time you run it, there could be a different answer that it gives you. You can't run it once. You have to run it hundreds, if not thousands of times. And then you have to have a new way of assessing whether that was or was not the thing that you wanted it to do. So I think like that's a whole area that companies are having to figure out how they're going to handle, whether they use a third party or themselves. We think the tuning of these AI agents and models is still going to be something that happens a lot outside of it because there are different ways of tuning. There could be in the prompt, RAG, so on and so forth. So there feel like there still are a lot of opportunities, but it's definitely, yeah, you have to be aware of the fact that OpenAI is going to continue to get better, or your business is going to get eaten alive. So on that note, like, we talk about a lot, like what are the areas where we can differentiate beyond just like where in the stack we play? Are there areas you think that will allow us to have a sustainable advantage in AI and AI agents, or do you think that everything's going to become commoditized?
I don't think AI is any different than any other kind of technology in the sense of, initially when APIs came out, people thought, oh, just connecting to those APIs was enough. And then you found out, no, you actually have to have a use case in mind and a set of customers you're solving for and a set of distribution that like captures that customers in their imagination and solves the real business problem for them. So I think all of that is true. It's why personally I would still particularly want to play closer to the customer and connecting the dots on use cases and what the technology is capable of, because I still think there's massive gaps in that. Like it's almost like, yeah, it's kind of like APIs. Like it's so easy to get something built on top of an LLM right now, but taking it from that, like that something to something actually that customers derive value from, can put like money against it with a business
Yeah.
case and put it in production for their customers, it's still very far from that.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And then like the other one that, I think I'd like to see play out is in theory, all the data we have from real human agents going and doing calls should allow us to fine tune these AI agents better than anybody else because we have so much of this information, so much of this data in a good, we intentionally set it up so that we have it in good shape to do it. And in theory, we should be able to work with each customer on their specific data to make it specifically tailored for them. Again, because we have this data. But I'm interested to see like, will the data really be a differentiator, or is the answer that these LLMs are so good that basically like, you do two calls and they've figured it out, and like, us having a ton of data is not helpful. Right now, it seems like it's the former, not the latter. I mean, like you see OpenAI going and paying Reddit or paying a newspaper, millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for access to the content because they needed to a large volume of content to do training. So I suspect that the data we have is going to be very helpful. But whether it's enough just to train on sort of general content or necessary to train on like very use case specific content, like I feel like still to be seen.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we've learned through our testing and also what we read other people concluding is AI agents, they're just like us. They're like humans. Like the more you try to give them in the prompt, the worse they get at any individual piece of that prompt. And I think there's other examples like that that I actually think we will find that like much more fine-tuned models with much more specific data, with very strict tasks in any given part of the conversation at least, will end up performing way better, because the more you load on top, not only the slower does the responsiveness get, but also it just gets more confused, just like a human. When you try
Yeah.
to teach a human so many different strategies, so many different products, so many different problems they can solve. I mean, there's a reason why customer success is separate from sales, even just for reasons like that. I think we're seeing the same thing, honestly, in AI models.
Yeah, for sure. So, if you're a founder today, thinking through, how you're going to, do something with AI, it sounds like, our basic recommendation is, start thinking of it as a toy, play with it, see what you can do with it. When you get excited about something, though, just because you can do a proof of concept doesn't mean that it's ready to go to production. To Rebecca's point, it's going to take somebody, whether it's you or somebody else, real time and effort to turn into something that's actually useful and practical for a business to use. I'd say the last piece that I think people underappreciate, though, is you're going to have very good, QA and testing tools. So one, for building it, but two, once it's in production, I think all these companies that are out there just saying, oh, you can use our AI to build some kind of, summary or agent or whatever, it's missing the critical piece, which is, now that I have it in production, how do I know that it's not out there saying, buy a house from, this company, even though like your business is about something completely different. Yes, you tested it once and you saw it didn't say it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening all the other time. So I think that companies are going to have to start integrating very good QA and testing tools on top of any kind of AI they use to know that it's functioning as they intended with the tone and results that they intend. But with that, any last thoughts,
Yeah,
Rebecca?
just the last thought was in the same way that, like, it's not deterministic, just like humans. So that it's kind of strange, right? It's both what's good about it. That's why it can start to fulfill the job of humans, but it is also so foreign from like
Yeah, it's not
traditional.
software.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to build it in the same software development cycle. You're going to have a completely new way of thinking about it. It's much more like running a contact center than it is like running an engineering software program. Cool. Well, with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you very much.